All right. Hello again, adventurers, and welcome to another exciting episode of Designing New Dragons. Join us as we may be creating your new favorite character. So, we are again delving into the world of Fabula Ultima. Partially because it's a cool RPG, but the other thing is a week from today, when I'm recording this, I will actually be having the session 0 for my Fabula Ultima mini campaign over on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Trainer Jody, and I upload them here as well. But if you want to watch it live, you gotta check it out there. Just a reminder, if you do enjoy this stuff, remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on. All those things are super important. Let's get into this. So, first things first, there's our Fabula Ultima character sheet. And we are, again, just going to follow the character creation guidelines. And just like before, we're going to allow a little bit of fate. I'm not quite to the point where I want to create a specific character. I'm having a lot more fun just kind of seeing what we can create out of a character here. And the identity creation tables, for me, and for this show specifically, are really, really nice. Because as you guys saw last time, we created that weird bounty hunter that was kind of a talky bounty hunter that had a little robot pet. I mean, that's pretty freaking cool. But I never would have made anything like that if I hadn't had my identity kind of chosen for me by rolling. So we're going to do that again. For those of you that haven't seen how this show works, I generally do a discovering new dragons on something, and then I do a total of 3 designing new dragons. So I create 3 characters in that RPG, and that's how it's gone thus far, and it's worked pretty well. So my last one, I may try to actually create a character that I already had an idea of instead of just kind of going with the flow. But for this one, I'm having fun going with the flow. So, and to be honest, I think that's kind of a compliment to the system in and of itself. Like if I go to D&D, I'm generally not going to start from, I'm just going to pick random things and see where it takes me. You know, I'm going to start with, well, let's start with a ranger and kind of go from that point. So I kind of like this. So, again, if you're using the identity creation tables, and part of character creation, you have to come up with identity, a theme, and an origin. And while they're nice from a role-playing perspective, absolutely, definitely, they also have mechanical benefits. You can burn a Fabula point to re-roll 1 or more of your dice for a check if you can somehow connect the roll to your identity, your theme, or your origin. So coming up with an identity that is broad enough that it's going to be applicable in quite a few different situations, but is defined enough that it makes sense that it can be applicable in different situations, is cool. So there's 3 parts on the identity creation tables. You don't have to use these. You can just say that I am, like if I was to create my Shadow Monk Aether. Aether is a Shadow Monk assassin. That is their identity. They are a Shadow Monk assassin. And so that's what I would put for my identity, and it works relatively well. It gives me a nice kind of broad, you know, they're associated with shadows, they're monks, so they're kind of martial artsy, and then assassin, they kill people for money and are probably a criminal. It gives me a lot of different things I can do. But their identity creation table chops things up into 3 different things. You have your core concept, your adjectives, and then your detail. And you can, last time we took 2 core concepts, 1 adjective, 1 detail. This time I'm going to do 1 core concept, 2 adjectives, and then details you still only choose 1 for the detail. So this time our core concept is going to be 11. And 11 is inventor. Okay, it's cool. So we're going to start with inventor is one of our things. And then our adjectives are going to be, oh, that's what I forgot. Hold, please. I'm going to roll a d6. We may not be an inventor. We are not. We are actually a gunslinger. Oh, even more fun. Because there is a grand total of 60 different core concepts. And so you roll a d6 for first to figure out which set of 20 you're going to roll on. So gunslinger's fun. So we got a gunslinger. Now for adjectives. First, again, we roll a d6. Okay. And our first... fun. This isn't a trope at all. Amnesiac is our first describing word. And our second one, our second adjective, is going to be from the same list. But this time, it is chosen. So chosen, amnesiac, gunslinger. And then our detail is going to be... 13 is of the Royal Army. So just rolling them like that doesn't create an interesting identity. It just looks like a bunch of words that I kind of put together. So once you have your words, I highly recommend switch them around, change some of the kind of connectors in them to make them make more sense. So I going to go Amnesiac Gunslinger chosen by the Royal Army. So just by changing a few things, we've gone from a kind of weird collection of words to an actual interesting identity. So this character is an amnesiac gunslinger chosen by the Royal Army. So he doesn't have a memory. He uses guns in some way, shape, or form. So we'll need to make sure we can use guns with one of our classes. And then chosen by the Royal Army. So the Royal Army, some sort of monarchy, has their own standing army. And their standing army has chosen him for a specific reason. We don't know what that reason is yet, but it gives us a lot to work on, right? So let's move on a little bit to the theme. So again, you can come up with your own theme. They have suggested the themes here, but the theme, and they have a little primer on what makes a good thing and what makes a bad theme. So definitely read through that. The suggested themes, which is I'm just going to go off the suggested themes because there's enough here that it's not particularly difficult to find a good theme. So suggested themes: ambition, anger, belonging, doubt, duty, guilt, hope, justice, mercy, vengeance. I mean, what would be really, really simple would be go with doubt would be our suggested theme. Because the kind of prompt they give for that is you need to find the answer to a burning question. Well, the burning question is, where is my memory gone? But again, from a mechanical standpoint, we're going to be using these in the game to give us rerolls effectively. And so if I was to choose doubt, then almost anything involving the amnesiac aspect of my gunslinger, of my identity, is also going to apply to that doubt. And so I think I want to avoid that just because it would basically be overlapping in both of them. I would be effectively limiting myself with that. And there's a lot more interesting things we could do. So we have an amnesiac gunslinger chosen by the Royal Army. So I think there's two here that I think could be really interesting. You have one that's guilt, and that could turn into something really interesting with the idea of we could say that the amnesia was a result or a punishment, which I think I like the punishment aspect a little bit better. For a deed that was done. And so the guilt in this character's history, they did something bad, something real bad, and as a result of that, they lost their memory. And I'm kind of digging the idea that they were chosen by the Royal Army. I'm getting kind of a Suicide Squad kind of feeling from this. So this is kind of the story I'm coming up for this guy. So does something horrible. Gets arrested for it, gets sent to jail. However, the Royal Army needs someone with a specific set of skills, which include the skills that this gunslinger has. And so, as part of their punishment, they're not given the option. They are effectively commanded. However, as a way to kind of control them, they've basically erased all of their memories before they were basically conscripted. They have told this character that you're a prisoner. What you did was truly heinous and disgusting, and the only way that you can ever repay your debt is to do exactly what we tell you. If you want to know anything about your life before becoming this, you need to complete your term of service. So we could have guilt as a theme, and have that, like, he feels really guilty for what he keeps getting told what he did was horrible and disgusting and this is his punishment, and it was so bad that they can't allow him to remember it. And so he's just always in this feeling of guilt because he did something that he doesn't remember. But he's constantly told it, and it's partially tied to his amnesia, but that also will give him the ability that basically anytime somebody, the idea of right or wrong is going to start coming up, this guilt is going to be like, well, I did something completely horrible, so I have to do the right thing. And so that will kind of expand mechanically what we can do, and I think it makes for an interesting character. And then for origin, again, the point of the origin is you can invoke it to re-roll things. And the way you invoke an origin is you have to somehow tie what's happening to where your origin is. So if I don't do this, then somebody in my home village is going to get hurt, or I'm doing this because they have insulted my hometown, and I'm so patriotic for it that it invigorates me and makes me want to try harder to prove that people from my home are better than this person claims that they are. Things like that. Due to the fact that I'm amnesiac, kind of like the idea that my origin, as far as I'm aware of, is prison, because that's the only thing I'm aware of from my past, is I was in prison and now I'm not. Kind of think that's interesting, because again, from a mechanical benefit, that could be just as easy as, if I don't do this, I'm going back to prison and I'm never going back. That could be invoking your origin. So yeah, that could be super cool. This is a weird character, guys. And I may need to talk to my therapist about this, because the fact that this came out of my brain says there is something massively wrong in there. But yeah, identity theme origin. Moving on. Next up. Thank you. Next up, we're going to do... classes, the fun part. All right, so again, we've got our classes. And we need something because firearms are considered a martial ranged weapon. So if we're going to be a gunslinger, we are definitely going to need martial ranged abilities. So our martial ranged weapons. So there's only one class that gives you access to martial ranged weapons, and that's the sharpshooter. Which kind of makes sense with the idea that we are a gunslinger. We're probably going to be taking something in sharpshooter, even if it wasn't the only one that gave us access to that. So definitely the first thing we're doing is going to be sharpshooter. Sharpshooter! And if anyone wonders why I pronounce it like that, if you guys have ever watched my D&D campaigns, one of them called Traversing the Veil, we have an artificer whose main weapon that they use is a hand crossbow that they actually have mounted to their arm. And they took the sharpshooter feat, and they roll kind of like me. And so what happened was, they're a new player, so I was explaining how sharpshooter works. I said, yeah, you take 5 off of your attack roll, and then you can get a plus 10 to damage. It's really nice. And so the player goes, yeah, cool. And she shoots and just misses completely. And she goes, okay, I'm going to do it again. Sharpshooter! And because she misses so often, it's become a running joke that whenever anyone else in the party hears sharpshooter, they hit the deck, because they know she's going to be shooting something, and whatever she's aiming at is probably safe. But anything else in the near vicinity is probably in danger. So, yes, the word sharpshooter has a very, very specific meaning in my groups. So there are 5 different sharpshooter skills. And again, the way that you build a class is you choose either 2 or 3 classes, and you get 5 levels between them. So you could theoretically take 4 levels of sharpshooter and 1 level of something else. What's significantly more common is 2-2-3, or 2-2-1, where you take 2 levels in one class, 2 levels in another, and 1 level in a third. For right now, the different skills that they have. And one of the ones that I think is most interesting, there's an ability called Crossfire for the sharpshooter. And basically, when a creature performs a ranged attack, you can burn some mind points. And there's a specific amount, but I don't like giving away so much information that people could just use this instead of buying the book. But basically, you burn some mind points, and you can cause their ranged attack to fail outright. So effectively, you shoot their bullets out of the sky. You can only do it if you have a ranged weapon equipped. But I just like the idea of, just being able to sit there and go boom, 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 and just done with it. I think that's really, really cool. So I'm thinking about Crossfire. They have one that's Hawkeye, which is basically kind of an Overwatch type thing. It's based on the use of a conflict sense. There we go. Actions, guard. So I'm going to look it up before I say the wrong thing. So there's one of the actions you can take is called the guard action. You focus your attention on defending your teammates and thwarting enemy attacks. You gain all the following benefits. You gain resistance to all damage types. Whenever you perform an opposed check against another character in the scene, you get a bonus to it. And then you may also choose to cover another creature present on the scene. If you do that, that creature can't be targeted by melee attacks. This will start at the next turn. So effectively, guard is a way to defend yourself, and if you choose to cover, it means that no one can make a melee attack against that particular character. If they make a melee attack, they have to make it against you if they want to try and hit that kick a character. So it's a pretty useful ability depending on how you build your kick a character. So with the sharpshooter, they have an ability called Hawkeye, which is when you perform the guard action, if you choose not to provide cover to another creature, you may choose one of these options. Your next range attack you perform before the end of the current scene deals extra damage, or you immediately perform a free attack with a bow or firearm, treating the high roll as 0 when calculating the damage. The way that damage is calculated is when you roll your attack, whatever the high roll is, you take that as part of your damage, and it'll always be like high roll plus something. So with Hawkeye, basically what it would mean is you can gain resistance to all the damage, and you can still make an attack in the same turn. So it is a very defensive style thing. And if you think about gunslingers in general, you generally don't consider them to be defensive style kick characters. You think of them like, running out and just boo, 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 and doing all those cool things that you see in westerns and stuff like that, because that's where the name Gunslinger comes from. So I actually kind of like the idea that, especially with the idea of guilt being their theme, that they're actually a very defensive gunslinger. So first of all, free benefits, I get HP plus 5 and can equip martial ranged and martial shields. Okay, so we've got that. And character level is going to be 5. So I already know that. So here, we're going to go Hawkeye 1. We're also going to go Crossfire 1. And Crossfire only has 1 level you can do. Hawkeye, for the one where you basically use guard to like pump up your next attack you do, that gets significantly more damage for every level of Hawkeye you have. But because I'm going to be building this as a defensive character, I think just having Crossfire and Hawkeye will work really well. So I've got those. I'm trying to think if I want to kind of heavy load sharpshooter with other things, because one of the other abilities that exists is what's called warning shot, which is basically when you hit something with a ranged attack, instead of doing damage, you can inflict the shaking condition, which if you guys look over here, these are the different conditions you can have, and shaken would reduce their willpower by 1 die. If you're both shaken and poisoned, that reduces willpower by 2. So things like that. You can inflict slow on each target hit by the attack. So slow is, again, dexterity goes down. And dexterity is what, unless you're wearing martial armor, dexterity factors into your defense. So lowering dexterity can lower their defense as well. Or each target hit by the attack loses some mind points. So I can use it to either scare somebody, slow somebody down, or get rid of some of their mind points, which can be really effective against a caster. And it still is a much more kind of defensive-oriented playstyle as opposed to just killing people. This is, bringing them down so that they're easier to take down. Kind of like it. And so, yeah, I think I'm going to go... I don't know if I'm still going to try and get 3 classes, or I'm just going to stick with 2 for this, but we're going to go Warning Shot 1. So 3 levels of sharpshooter. I don't think I want any more, because I want to do some other stuff with this character. So yeah, let's see what other stuff we have. I've been kicking around the idea of a guardian. Again, guardians are basically your tanks. And there's a lot of stuff that you can do with it. So as far as the Guardian, a lot of it has to do with using a shield, which I'm not going to be using. I want my Gunslinger to use just guns. And they do have an ability called Protect, which is basically when somebody is threatened by an attack, spell, or other danger, you can just take their place. And if you're already affected by whatever's going to affect them, you just get hit by it twice. So I kind of like the idea that, again, if we're going to make this a very kind of defensive focused character, I think that Protect would be very, very cool. So yeah, I think I'm going to go... This is not the character I thought I was going to be building. So Guardian, we get another HP plus 5, and then can equip martial armor and shields. So the fact that I can equip... Like, I have 2 different things that give me access to martial shields means nothing. You can't, like, double shield or something. Or, however, one of the things a Guardian can do, which I won't be doing because, again, we're a Gunslinger, but they do have an ability called Dual Shield Bearer, where you have 2 shields and you fight with them. Like, that's cool. But we're not doing that. So you've got that. And then one more interesting thing. I've thought about Darkblade. Because again, Darkblade, it's your Dark Knight kind of thing, and they'll have things like you can burn hit points to make your attacks more powerful, and that kind of, I kind of like the idea of a dark gunslinger, but for this particular character, I'm not really into it. What could be fun, and again, we could just put another thing into sharpshooter, or we could put... Oh, forgot to actually write down the skill I'm using. The skill is called Protect. There's only 1 level of it, but I like to put it in there so I can make sure that I have enough levels and everything. What could be fun is they could be a tinkerer. And maybe that's where they get their gunsling ability from, is they make gadgets and stuff like that. Because one of the things a tinkerer can do is they can take an ability called gadgets, which effectively gives you kind of cool things that you can use your inventory points for a lot of times. So, like, the one that I'm thinking of, there's a couple different things. There's one... All right, so when you choose gadgets, you choose a specific gadget type. So you can either be an alchemist, you can have infusions, or you can have magitech. And then you can get multiple levels of it, and either get access to a different type, like you start off with infusions and then maybe you also get alchemy, or you can just level it up and get access to more advanced technologies. So infusions, basically you burn some inventory points, and it allows you to basically change the damage type and do a little bit of extra damage. So, for example, the 3 basic infusions you are able to use are cryopyrovolt. So ice, fire, and then bolt damage. So it basically means you have elemental ammo that you use your inventory points to create, which is kind of cool. But the other one I thought would be really interesting is Magitech. And the basic one is you burn some mind points to basically hack a construct that you can see. So you hack it, and then you get control over the construct until it dies, or you get rid of it, which I think is kind of cool. And then if we go one more point into Magitech, you can create what's called a magic cannon. And the magic cannon is basically just a mega elemental rifle thing. So that's kind of cool as well. So we've got gadgets, which could be very interesting. And alchemy is just more confusing than I want to go into here. But you create potions, and there's a bunch of different things that you can do with them. I don't want to play with that right now. What kind of project? So yeah, we could go Tinkerer. We could go Wayfarer again, but I don't think I want to. What is Weapon Master? That's all melee. Yeah, Weapon Master has to be melee, so we're not going to play with that. Arcanist could be cool. You could invoke a summon. And depending on the Arcanum, that could be very, very cool. So I thought there was one. So there's one that's called Arcanum of the Tower, which again is an example Arcanum. Part of creating your character and everything, if you were to do this in a session 0 with an actual GM and everything, is you actually talk about the Arcanum that exist, and you're encouraged to create your own Arcanum, and these are just examples. But again, since I don't have a GM that I'm working with, I'm just building a character, I'm just using the stuff that they have here. And so Arcanum of the Tower, the way that Arcanum works is you summon them, and that's called merging with them, and they give you a merge effect. And so for Arcanum of the Tower, when you summon the Arcanum, the merge effect, you choose a damage type, and until the Arcanum is dismissed, each of your allies present has resistance to the chosen damage type. So effectively, I could invoke a summon that protects all of my allies but doesn't protect me. You do not gain the resistance. And then if I dismiss it, it just does a huge amount of light damage to anybody that I want. So I kind of like, again, with the character that we're creating here, I kind of like the idea that maybe... Oh, this could be even better. Okay, so we're definitely going Arcanist. We have to. Because I just came up with a really cool idea for this character. All right, so Arcanist. We're going to go helps if I spell it right. Arcanist. There we go. And free benefit is mind points plus 5. We got that. The skill we're going to get is Bind and Summon, because that's what gives us the ability to do that. And if you take this skill of character creation, you begin play with one Arcanum of your choice already bound to you, chosen from the list on the next page. Other than that, you may only obtain new Arcana through exploration and story progression. So just like in a lot of Final Fantasy games, You can start with a summon, but most of the summons you're going to find by exploring the world, and at least in Final Fantasy's case, a lot of the times you find your summons by kicking the crap out of them. And then they go, oh, you're kind of strong. You want to team up? So, kind of like that. And then we're going to put in here Arcanum of the Tower is our Arcanum that we have. And so, this is my idea. I'm going to take a drink. The drink wasn't my idea. So this is my idea. Gunslinger here. Very much kind of Vash the Stampede style thing. Gunslinger resonates with this Arcanum of the Tower. He discovers it, binds with the Arcanum for reasons that would become apparent during the campaign. That isn't going to happen. But he binds with the Arcanum, and not realizing exactly how powerful this thing was, due to getting into a dangerous situation in the middle of town, he summons the Arcanum to try and protect as many people as he can, but gets to the point where it is dangerous enough that he decides to dismiss it and use the dismiss effect, which does a lot of damage to the specific wording is choose any number of creatures you can see. But because he'd never done this before, he didn't realize how to control it, and just ended up doing widespread damage to a lot of people that he was trying to protect. And when he got caught, instead of them believing it was an accident, they just label him as a dangerous person that was trying to effectively become we'll avoid that terminology, but effectively someone that just wants to hurt a lot of people all at once. And so they jail him, but they realize that he can be useful, and so they do this. They give him the amnesia so that there's less of a chance that he will realize what he can and can't do, and they don't have to worry about him kind of coming up with the same motivation, because they believe that he was doing this for some purpose, and if they just wipe out that purpose, then he's not going to do it, and they can just control him. So yeah, again, the fact that I'm coming up with this character so easily definitely, I think, says something about my mental state that probably isn't a great thing. But, you know, it is how it goes. I need massive amounts of help, guys. Just seriously, massive amounts of help. But overall, I think it's a cool character. I really do. So yeah, let's do this. Now, normally, what would happen is you choose your 4 attributes yet. Oh, we should probably go. Moving on. So normally you would choose your 4 attributes. What I'm going to do first is actually I want to look at specifically at what guns use. Guns use dexterity and insight for their attack rolls. So I think what I want to do with this particular character is... Where did we go? So there's a bunch of different profiles you can use. You have the Jack of all trade, where everything is a D8. You have your average, where you have 1d10, 2d8s, and 1d6. Where you have specialized, which is 2d10s and 2d6s. I think we're going to make this one specialized. So we're going to go d10, d10, and then d6, and d6. Basically, to kind of really lean into the idea that this character is very kind of hyper-focused on the ability to be a gunslinger, and dexterity is one of your defensive things. Like, that's what you do for a lot of defense. That's what your defense is based on, depending on the armor that you're wearing. So yeah, I kind of like the idea of making the specialist, and then he's just kind of really weak and not particularly strong-willed, which would feed into the idea that he's easily controlled. So the Amnesiac, chosen by the Royal Army, definitely would choose someone with low willpower so they can more effectively control them. So I like that. And then calculate hit points and mind points. So maximum hit points are total character level plus 5 times your character's base might die size. Blah, blah, blah. That's hard to say. So 5 times might is 30, plus 5 is 35. So start off at 35. However, I get hit point from plus 5 from Sharpshooter, hit point plus 5 from Guardian. So that brings us to 45. Crisis is half of that, rounded down. So 45 would be 22 is my crisis. Mind points is total character level plus 5 times your willpower die size. So again, bad willpower. So that means we've got 35, because again, level 5, and 30 from willpower. However, we do have MP plus 5 from Arcanist, which is good because summoning an Arcanum takes 40 mind points. So if I didn't have 40 mind points, I couldn't summon. I would have to change things up just so I could summon it. It does mean that summoning is a one and done thing, and then I have to burn inventory points to be able to restore my mind points and stuff like that. And then for inventory points, it is 6 because you always have 6 inventory points. Unless you have a specific class that gives you more. As we saw with the last character I built, there are a few that actually give you more. Tinkerer would have given us more inventory points. So, got that. And then calculate defense and magic defense. Defense is equal to dex size. Magic defense is insight. So again, for a defensive character, maxing out both dexterity and insight makes sense. So 10 and 10, and I can equip martial armor, martial shields, and martial ranged weapons. I have nothing that gives me martial melee weapons. So we've got that. And then we get to purchase starting equipment. Just like before, we start with 500, and now we get to get our starting equipment. Well, and I do really quickly, I want to remember, because I might have this character use a shield, I might not. But I don't think I want to. Conflict scenes, actions, attack. Okay, so 2-weapon fighting. When you perform the attack action, if you have 2 weapons of the same category equipped, such as 2 swords or 2 firearms, you may declare that you're attacking with both. You perform the 2 attacks in any order you prefer, and they may both be aimed at the same target or different targets. The following penalties apply. Both of them can't have multi, and the high roll is always treated as 0. And you can't use 2-weapon fighting when performing a free attack. So the way this character is built, if we were to choose 2 firearms for the character, they're both 250 zenny, so that would be it for my equipment. I wouldn't be able to get armor or anything like that, or at least not with my equipment stuff. I might be able to get it with the extra money I get afterwards. But as far as starting equipment, if I get 2 pistols, I can dual wield them, and then because of Hawkeye, I then have kind of a choice that I want to make. Either I can make a regular attack and basically attack twice, or I can use Hawkeye, which gives me the ability to give myself resistance, but I'm only able to shoot once. And damage for firearms is high roll plus 8. So even with my high roll being 0, I will always be doing 8 damage. And because they're Dex and Insight, my high roll can be as high as a 10. So, yeah, there's lots of different stuff that can happen here. I think I like, again, being a gunslinger. Yes, I understand gunslinger can just have one, but I like the idea of a dual thing. So I think I'm going to go, main and offhand, I'm going to go pistol and pistol. And then he's just not going to have armor for the first part of the game, which is perfectly fine. And so that is going to be ranged Dex plus Insight. And then damage is HR plus 8. Physical. And all I'm going to do, because it's the same thing twice, is go there. So there, I've got my dual pistols. So I can 2-weapon fight if I want. Also can just... and that also does mean, from a mathematics perspective, because it's HR plus 8, that means the benefit of attacking twice, if both attacks hit, that would mean the only time I'm actually losing damage if I do a single attack versus a double attack is if I roll a 9 or a 10 on my for my high roll. Otherwise, my dual attacking both of them hits does at least the same amount of damage, but I can spread it out or do whatever I want to it. So, just from a math thing, kind of think that's interesting. And it does mean if your dexterity and insight are D8s for this, that means that dual wielding will never, or 2-weapon fighting will never do less damage unless you miss one of the attacks. As long as both attacks hit, you will never do less damage. Anyway, that was one of the things I was thinking about was, well, what happens? HR 0 seems like it's really capping it. No, it's actually a good idea. So yeah, that's all we have, and that zeroes out our Zenith. Which kind of sucks, but, worse things can happen. And then... we roll for our initial savings, so I need my dice again. Roll for initial savings. It's 2d6 times 10. So let's see what we get. So I get a 3 and a 2, so 5. So I've got 50 Zenith, which if we go back to the starting armor, I cannot buy anything for that. It would be nice to have something for armor, like travel garb would be nice, or a combat tunic would be nice. But no, none of that is going to be useful. So, yeah, I think that is... Oh, and then gain your starting Fabula points. So we always start with 3 Fabula points. And yeah, that is effectively our character for the most part. So moving on to final thoughts. And part of final thoughts is where I like to get my name for this character. So they're an amnesiac gunslinger chosen by the Royal Army. Again, they've got that whole Suicide Squad thing going on. So what I'm thinking is, instead of giving them a name, I'd like to give them a designation. Because again, I think that fits even better to the character. And they have a real name that I think part of their character growth throughout the campaign would be they would eventually find out who they are. And that's the other thing that's kind of interesting is they don't know what they did. And if, while serving with the Royal Army, they eventually do find out their crime, they're not going to find out what their actual crime is because the people in the Royal Army have been told a false story. So very unreliable narrator the thing. So even if they do find out, quote unquote, what their crime was, they're going to find out the wrong crime and they're going to believe a lie. And so for a character like that, part of their growth could be, first of all, learning how to deal with the guilt and stuff like that, and then finding out that no, it was just a massive accident. Still a very, very bad thing, but it was just a massive, massive accident that they have been basically scapegoated for. And kind of dealing with the fact that the people that they trusted were just kind of using them. And, like, there's so many things this character could have. But for a name, let us call them... Again, I want them to just have a code name. They don't have... They're not human. They're not considered human enough to be given a real name. They're a tool that are used. And so... we could just call them the Protector, because that's basically almost everything that they're built to do here is based on protection in general. So yeah, I mean, we could just call them that, or even more, because the Protector still sounds noble. Could just call them the Asset, because that again, to get really, really dark and just very, very horrible about this, if you are using an actual sapient being for something, dehumanizing them is one of the more effective ways to control someone. It's one of the reasons that in a lot of just really, really bad things throughout history, dehumanization was a massive, massive part of it. You create an us versus them mentality. If you are aware of current politics all around the world, not just in the US or Europe or the Middle East or anything like that, all across the world, we are hearing dehumanizing language constantly. They're not other people. They are fascists, or they are terrorists, or so many other words that are used to just try and get rid of their humanity. And when truly, truly horrible things have happened throughout the world, dehumanizing language is part of it, because it's such an important aspect of control, is to get people to stop thinking of the enemy or whatever you are trying to control as humans. If they are less than that, then it's not as bad to use them, and so, yeah, the idea that this character is just referred to as the Asset would be a method of control, not only for the troops, because dehumanizing someone else can make them themselves consider themselves less than human, and they'll be willing to kind of put up with more than things because they think they deserve it, because they are a lesser person. And it would be a way to control the troops as well, because you don't want your troops starting to empathize and sympathize with this person that you're trying to control. So by convincing them that they are also less than human. Again, this is massively, massively dark, and everything about this is not supposed to be good. Everything about this is supposed to be just horrible. So I don't want anyone going away from this discussion with the idea that I somehow think this is okay. No, this is the precursor to most of the atrocities that have happened throughout history, is starting with dehumanizing language. But from a character perspective, this creates a very interesting character to portray, especially as they grow, because part of their growth is going to require them to understand that, no, I'm not less of a human. I'm a full sapient being, and I deserve to be treated as such. And that is such an interesting and powerful story to kind of go through, especially coming from an abuse victim, because abuse, a lot of times, you are dehumanized over and over and over again as abuse victims. And a huge part of recovering from abuse is realizing that it's not your fault what happened to you, and you didn't deserve it. And wow, was not expecting that. Yeah, so yeah. Without getting too much more into topics I don't want to discuss right now, everything that's happening to this character is super, super bad. But I think it will make for a very powerful story of getting through that. And I guess I should mention here as well, as you guys have just seen, certain topics can cause reactions that you're not expecting. So if you were to play a character like this in a campaign, part of your session 0 needs to include, hey, are you guys okay dealing with subjects like this? Subjects like dehumanization, subjects like being the survivor of abuse and mistreatment and the things like that. Because this can be extremely triggering, and I'm not talking triggering as in, oh my god, that person just threw out his kale, I am so triggered. No, I'm talking about the psychological definition of the term as it relates to something like PTSD, where triggering means that it can actually cause panic attacks, can cause flashbacks, and other really, really dangerous and detrimental. There's the word I'm looking for. Very dangerous or very detrimental things to happen to people. So yeah, definitely if you're going to come up with a character and are going to actually want to play a character that's kind of this dark and rooted in real things. Like, this isn't just, oh, it was a cool idea. This is stuff that really happened. Well, summoning creatures and having them explode. It's not actually a real thing that can happen, but being used by people and dehumanized by them is something that happens. So anyway, I was not expecting this to get that dark, especially with the character that we created here. Like, this is a very kind of cool, noble character, and then it just got massively dark really quick. Again, probably something I should talk to my therapist about. But, that being said, that is our character. I love it. I think it's a really, really interesting, unique character that, again, gets really, really dark, but my background in acting was I played almost exclusively villains, because I was like 6'1", 6'2" in high school, and I was shaving by my freshman year, and I didn't shave very often because I hated it. So I always had this really gnarly looking neck beard. I still don't get a really nice beard when I grow one. It mostly grows down here, but I've started getting. You guys can see I haven't shaved in a few days, so you can see I get a little bit of growth on the side, and I can get kind of a mustache. But when I was in high school, all I got was this nasty neck beard here. But anyway, so I'm used to playing villains and really, really dark characters. And I enjoy that because they're a good villain, a well-written villain is really interesting and requires you to really learn a lot about how someone can make the wrong choices. Because that's what a villain truly is. Like, a really good villain is someone that, due to something in their life, they made the wrong choice. Not that they were forced to make the wrong choice, or this is not me trying to paint villains as victims or anything like that. This is me saying that everybody has choices, and villains are the ones that make the wrong choices. And so being able to understand why a character would make a wrong choice, and then how they would continue to make wrong choices and things like that, that is a really interesting thing for an actor to go through, and I really enjoyed doing it. Playing villains is a hell of a lot of fun when they're well written. When they're poorly written, they're stupid. But there are lots of really well written villains in fiction, and I got to play a few of them. Javert is probably my favorite character I've ever played, and he was an absolute blast to play. It was one of the most unique, interesting characters I've ever had the chance to play, and yeah, so I identify a lot with broken characters because that's what villains are. They're broken characters that did the wrong thing. And I am 100% a broken Kiki character. Again, victim of abuse, and the abuse basically shattered my brain. And then, in an attempt to fix it, they broke it even more with medications that I never should have been on, that caused what seems like permanent brain damage. So yeah, I highly identify with characters that are broken and trying to kind of get out of the miasma of the life that they have lived. So this character, to me, this character is really, really interesting, and I could have a lot of fun playing them, as long as everyone else at the table was okay with it going real dark every so often. And that's one of the nice things about the Amnesiac part of it is this is a character that I could definitely play as very kind of lighthearted a lot of the time, and then just every so often that little darkness would creep in, and because they don't know any better, they would just speak about really horrible stuff, like the way that they're treated, as completely normal, and they would have no idea that anything was wrong. Which is again another common thread between victims of specifically of child abuse, or abuse that happens when you are a child. You have nothing to realize that this isn't how it's supposed to go. And I guess it happens with a lot of abusive situations. Because I know a lot of not a lot. I know a few people have been in abusive relationships that they stayed in it for so long because they had they'd grown up in a house where their parents had an abusive relationship, and so they just figured that was normal. And then when they got into relationships, they would just kind of casually talk about things that were really not okay. And they'd be like, "Well, I mean, that's just how it works." And it was so matter of fact that they would say these things like, "Well, I mean," just kind of going, "Man, sometimes when it rains, it pours." And it's like, no, that's not when it rains, it pours. That's waterboarding. We need to stop that from happening. You don't have to deal with that. Wow, I was not expecting this character to go that way. Anyway, that's going to be all for me today. As always, if you enjoyed this for some strange reason, maybe like watching a train wreck, you just can't look away, please remember to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon to turn notifications on in the comments down below. On a scale of 1 to 10, how badly do you think I need to talk to my therapist? Because, whoa, that went dark really, really quick. Wow. And anything else about the character? Do you think the character's cool as well? Put that in the comments down below. Otherwise, again, that's all for me today. I will see you guys in the next time. Bye-bye.